Le cheval plaît beaucoup, hein. C'est un vecteur de communication extraordinaire.
Avant d'être un cavalier, c'était important d'être un horseman.
Always put the horse before the personal ambitions.
Vraiment un cheval incroyable.
Voilà quelqu'un qui est champion olympique et qui n'est pas ordinaire.
Se remettre en question et peut se servir des défaites pour être meilleur après.
Ce feeling, je l'ai eu directement avec Caleb.
On fait du haut niveau, il y a le côté financier, c'est comme ça.
Aller en compétition parce qu'il est bon, pas parce qu'il paye une table.
Moi, je veux pas courir mes chevaux pour l'argent.
If you can do it in a way that doesn't take too much out of your horses.
Quand on voit l'évolution en 10 ans de temps, qu'est-ce que ça va être dans 10 ans?
Pouvoir motiver les jeunes à aller au bout de leurs rêves.
Forme de très très bons compétiteurs. Je ne vais pas dire que ça forme des hommes de chevaux.
Pour moi, les bons moments, ils sont à venir.
Aujourd'hui, réussir sa vie, c'est avoir la vie que l'on souhaite.
Last January, as you know, we made our way back to Wellington for the 4th year in a row. Every year, we spend a few days between Wellington and Ocala meeting riders, trainers, even owners who are part of what we call the American equestrian industry. Over the years, we've sat down with iconic names like Katie and Henri Prudent, Rodrigo Pessoa, Farrington, Beezie Madden, always with one goal in mind: better understanding how the North American system works. This year we wanted to go a step further. Rather than one-on-one interviews, we brought 4 riders around the table for a real conversation, a round table to ask the big questions. Why don't more American riders produce their own horses? What defines the trainer-rider relationship across the Atlantic? And most of all, what can each system, American and European, learn from the other? So here it is, an honest, passionate, and even really fresh and funny conversation with Charlotte Jacobs, Marie Eckhart, Mark Blumen, and Quentin Judge. We hope you enjoy it as much as we did, and as always, we are looking forward to continuing the conversation with you on our socials. Have a good time listening to I'm an Equestrian podcast. Are we all set?
Yes.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time here. We are at WEF Wellington. It's Thursday evening now, and we're going to talk about the different systems between the US system in equestrian sport and the European system. I'm going to introduce you briefly, all of you, so that the audience knows exactly who is going to talk and who is going to share views about this topic. Quentin, you'll be the first one because you're the first one in my list. You're a successful trainer. You also sell horses. You're a show jumper. You're based here in Wellington, Florida. You have worked along your way with many top professionals such as McLean Ward, Rodrigo Pessoa, Jan Tops also, to only name a few. You also participated in Nations Cup and high-level sports. Do I miss anything?
World Cup finals also, which went terribly, but I was there.
All right.
Part of it.
Thank you. And Charlotte, you are a super successful rider as well. You have been successful since the junior classes. You made a name for yourself even in the senior ranks. You have attended the FEI North American Youth Championships back in
long time ago
11. You have won silver medals in junior, in young rider as well, and you made your debut in 2022 in the first Nations Cup you rode in Lisbon.
Yeah.
Mark, you have been riding since the age of 3, like forever, we can tell. You have followed the footsteps of your brothers, Ilan, Joseph, and also your cousin Daniel, that we already interviewed long time ago in this podcast. You never stopped. You grew up in Colombia. You're now based here in the US and in Florida. You're riding 5-star classes, and you're also very successful. You're a key member of Blumen Equestrian, and you are told to be seen for your ability to ride any type of horses. I guess. And Marie, you're the easiest one for me to introduce because I know you because you're French. So you were born near Paris. You come from a very typical equestrian family from France. Your father was a show jumper and breeder, and you have settled here in 2017? No?
No,
Yeah.
27.
27, sorry. Okay, long time ago. So you have been practicing show jumping both in Europe at the highest level, but also here you have worked with riders such as Paul Chocomely, Michel Robert, Albert Vourne, and Eric Lamaze. Is there anything I'm missing?
Yeah, I've been training with also Katie and Henri Prudent last year a little bit.
Just to start this conversation, and before we talk about every component of the system here in the US, but also every component of the system over there in Europe, I'd like to ask you, maybe individually, what, according to you, are the strengths and the weaknesses of each system?
I can really feel that in Europe we develop horses. There is a big breeding. So there is really good professional to do that, really good riders, and we have a really good circuit to bring the horses along. So that is really the strength of Europe. While here it's more you have to come with, it's more like a business, you have to come with horses ready, you can do sales, training. But for me the main thing it's developing horses in Europe and more like competing, training here.
So for me, to piggyback on what you were saying, I think the development of horses in Europe is very strong. The young horse development, especially for either top sport or from a sales perspective. I think in America we have a really great structure in the equitation with goals to make it to the top sport for a lot of riders. I would love to see the US have more young horses and make that more important over here and developing horses for the top sport. But yeah, I do think we do a good job with our training and having the equitation and having a lot of classes for a lot of different people at different levels.
I'd say, what both Marie and Charlotte said is really true. We all, if we're looking for young horses and to find young horses, we all go to Europe to find them because it's such a strong, much stronger market of breeding horses. So I think as far as what Marie said of bringing along young horses and that kind of, even from a young age for riders development where they're starting in younger horses and doing young horse shows and learning a little bit more of those set of skills are really invaluable. And what Charlotte said in the States, a rider like herself who came up through the equitation who really had intense proper training from a young age, position, line and track, all those things we try to carry over into the higher ranks, I think is also very valuable. But, it's not that it doesn't happen in other countries, but I think it's not rare to see an all young female American team in a Nations Cup. And, I think there's a really good system. Under 18 in the junior division seem to be really female dominated, but I think there's for sure strength and weaknesses in both, but I think in the American sport there is a strength to bring young riders up to the top of the sport quickly, and I think you see that in Nations Cups and on the international stage.
I guess there's nothing left to say. They've said it. They've said it all. I mean the access of horses that you have in Europe, it's massive. We all go to shop for our horses in Europe. I think it's like they said, the cost there is way less than it is here, and that's what Charlotte said. It would be nice to be able to produce more young horses here, but it's quite expensive to do it, and it's not the classes are not really important enough for people to be competing the horses here. So yeah, I feel like the big difference is basically that you buy the horses there when they get produced there, and when they're ready to compete in the higher sport, the prize money and the competition is higher here than it is in Europe. So most people do that, produce the horses there, and then when they're ready, just bring them up and compete here.
Marie, this year you chose to stay in US during the summer season in North Salem when you usually back in France. Why did you make this choice? Do you think there are more competition and maybe it's more interesting to stay in US?
I really like to do WEF, and stay in Florida for like 5-6 months and then go back to Europe to find horses, to keep my connection, and also to bring along some horses that I live there with as a rider. But last year I just came back because I have a client that stay in New York. So I went back to Europe for 3 months and came back to be able to compete here.
Mark, you were saying that, and Charlotte as well, that you would like to see that American riders and American system would be able to produce more young horses. So what is preventing the US and the US equestrians from importing younger horses to develop them the way we do in France or the way we do in Belgium with the 4, 5, 6-year-old circuit that you also have here? You do have classes for young horses.
The cost.
Yeah, the elephant in the room is
that's
the
really
cost.
it.
Yeah.
You know, it costs basically less than half to produce a horse in Europe than it costs here.
More than half, I'd
3
say.
times more.
Yeah,
At
exactly.
least.
Here you have to basically pay a lot of money to maintain a horse, and in order to be able to show it, a weekend can cost you a lot to bring the horse to the show and jump 3 classes that actually, even if you win them all, you don't even get your entries back.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. You know, in Europe you can go to any local show and with 20 euros you jump your horse around at the horse show. So here that doesn't exist, and that is what is preventing us riders to be able to produce our horses here.
Just to be able to explain to the European audience that don't know the US system yet, how does it cost to show a week in national classes or international classes here in the US, and versus, Marie, can you tell us and the entry fee in an international and national classes in Europe, how much does it cost?
So in Europe, basically for the young horses to start, it's like Mark was saying, you can show for 25-50 euro like per round, or sometime even for 2 rounds. So it's really cheap. And for the national, depend of the national classes, but basically for 500 euro, you can show the whole weekend. Even less if you do like some schooling like we have here. It's like 50 euro the schooling. So it's, for me, it's three time or even 4 time cheaper there.
Not saying, just to be accurate, that if you ride in France, if you show the young horses from the French breeding, you have like support from the state and stuff. So if you pay like the 30 euro to ride a course, but if you're clear, you will gain money, like you will get 100 euros just because you were clear, and just because you get some money from the system to be producing a horse from the breeding, from the French breeding.
Yeah, basically you can get your money back on the entries, so it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Charlotte, as far as American riders, a lot of young horses they produce, and they have a breeding system, and so she can probably speak to the cost weekly. But I can say, as far as a bit of a gauge, you know, here in Wellington, if you want to bring your horse to the show, a young horse, and just school, like, you know, if you can, like you would do in Europe, and pay 20 euros, and if you went there, you'd have a nice warm-up, a nice course, you could jump it twice. There's a ring here that used to be the $5 ring that's gone up, and now is the $30 ring. So to take your horse around one time is $30, and it's not a full, it's a hunter jumps, and it's just to jump your horse somewhere else. Otherwise, you come, you know, to the show, you pay it full fee the week. It's very, very expensive. So as far as the specific cost, maybe Charlotte can let us know on that.
You have to pay, sometimes here I think you have to pay a shipping fee. You have to pay, I mean, the fees really add up. It's, I mean, over the summer, I'm not going to say what horse show, but we were at a horse show, and we were jumping. We had 2 5-year-olds, and we went to the ring and we showed the 2 5-year-olds. You know, we're first and third or whatever. I think there were only 4 in the class, but there was no prize money. So you're just seeing that money and it just gets flushed down the toilet. So you're not getting anything back. And I spent time in Ireland. I spent 3 years there, and it was the same sort of thing. If you're you know, as France, it's $20 to show, and there's no shipping fee, there's no ambulance fee that's taken care of by the horse show, and it just adds up. And then you have to pay for the horse to be here in the first place. That's expensive, you know, importing a horse from Europe, and then to show there's really nothing to gain unless, you're selling the horse for a lot of money afterwards. So yeah, I think it's something that really America needs to adapt, and they need to change.
I want to talk about a main subject, which is education here in United States. I was listening to an interview given by Katie Prudent, in which she said that the American system enabled riders to reach a good level, even if they didn't have the sense or the talent. She went on to say that this was certainly what was lacking in the American system, giving riders a feeling. I think in France or in Europe, riders have more feeling. What do you think about that?
I mean, for myself, I think that there's, for sure, if you looked at Europe or even France as a whole, you would say, the best French riders have this amazing feel and sense of gallop and pace, and they work with the horse, and it seems, feel is a really broad term, but they have a great feel for the horse. I think that there's, even as a young riders, there's so many more riders in Europe of that age range who are all doing the same thing. So I think as far as a professional or someone rising to the top, you pretty much have to be a talent and not just someone who's being trained from a younger age, because I know working in Europe also, we were all there as work riders, and the best rider was the show rider, and then he left, and then the second best work rider was the show rider. So I think you have to have talent and feel from a young age in Europe to be able to be paid to ride and survive. And I think in the States, for sure, there is a much more strict system on position and on teaching young riders and juniors to ride. And more than anything, I train a lot, but I think through the equitation system, American riders young age are able to execute a plan, which maybe would not be feel. But if they'd say you're going to do this and this and this and stay on the outside track here and the inside track there, they can kind of check those boxes off. They've been trained that way. So I think there's positive and negatives to both for sure. But I think the feel and having a natural feel for a horse and knowing how to make a horse jump well, for sure that the cream kind of rises to the top more in Europe than here in the younger ranks, I would say for sure.
Can I add something?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I also believe that in Europe, the riders that become professional, they ride young horses. So they start 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they ride any type. Like they usually work for breeders, and they have to ride anything. Tall, small, hot, cold, stoppers. And when you ride 10, 15 horses a day like that, you learn how to feel and ride anything.
We met with Michael Duffy yesterday in Ocala, and he was telling us a story of him riding ponies. He was basically 10, 12 years old, riding ponies at the show. He rode one day 18 ponies, different ponies, the same day at the show. Obviously, this is something that will shape the way he will be able to ride and to adapt later. But still, yesterday, so in Ocala, we were watching the 1 meter class, so it's really like a class for low-level amateur, we can say. I was amazed by the level of the riders. All the strides were good, all the places were good, the balance, the gallop, the canter. It's I can tell the difference between a 1 meter class in Europe, where it feels like it's a bit wild, you're not all things are not under control, definitely. Where here in the US, people would be jumping 1 meter, but they would be able to ride or jump 130, the way they ride, I believe, no?
And And also they have trainers.
Yeah.
You can see in France, there is the ladies that put the horse in the trailer, drive the trailer, go to the show, ride, even if she doesn't know how to ride. People don't really have a trainer. Yeah. In America, it's really, really organized. It's really well done.
There's a lot of structure.
Yeah, and which is great because they ride really well. Like you say, it's perfectly done, and also the trainer do a really good job. They flat the horses. They also pick the right horses. They do the whole thing, which in Europe, it's for some kids or young rider, they can do that, but it's maybe, I don't know, I would say 30% of the people. The rest, they just go and ride. So
yeah, but I think there's something to be said for the training. I mean, and we're at WEF now, so this is the highest level of sport in the States. But from top, yes, in 160 in the 5-star level, but also the lower level. And we have the low amateur division, which is one of the biggest divisions of the horse show. It's meter 20 and meter 25 final. But that classic on Sunday, the final, I mean, those courses have something around 100 horses in it. There's 3 skinnies, there's a triple bar to a double verticals, there's a
They're
spooky
proper
plank.
courses,
They're
yeah.
hard courses. They're 125, but we walked it last week, and a client of ours first time doing it, and she was I mean, they have to, because otherwise you'd have 50 clear and the class would go for hours. So those are 125 courses, but they are annoyingly technical and trappy courses. So if someone doesn't know how to ride, properly and ride a line and track and slow a horse down, they're never going to jump clear. So I think it's a double-edged sword for sure. But at this lower level in the States, I say we have younger riders that work for us or working students, and I say there's a sport here in the States, but there's a large element, I think maybe 60% of this in the States, that it's a service industry. You have clients and you're training the clients, and they want to do it on the weekends, and they're amateur riders, and they want to come down. They don't practice, but they want to have a good result. So it's to the trainer to make sure the horse is prepared and they have the right horse. So there's a big service industry element of this, and then there's a sport, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a different dynamic than the Europe, or very different.
I completely agree, but I also think that's what's interesting from like a sales perspective is you have so many, if you get a horse, they can do so many different things over here. They can do the hunters, they can do the equitation, they can do the low adults, all the way up to the young riders at 150. So there's a huge, availability for horses and sales horses over here, which makes it interesting.
I think, here, Europe is more, I would say, they're horse people, they're people that actually have horses in the backyard, they may be, since it's cheaper, a lot of people can have horses, and just because they love the animal, but they maybe don't have the means to pay a private trainer with the caliber of Eric Navet, Here in America, we're very lucky, the industry is very big, but most of the people that ride horses here in America, they come from means because it's expensive to do it here, So a person like Carl Cook, he's lucky enough that, and if I was him, I would do exactly the same thing as he's doing, He's an unbelievable rider. He's a super talent. And he picked Eric Navet, one of the best riders in the history of the
best.
Yeah, he's one of the best riders in the history of the sport. And you see the success he's had. He followed everything that Eric says, and it produces a gun like Carl is. Carl is a scare for anybody in the world right now. Every time he's in a jump off, the guy can beat in a good day anybody. So I think that's what it is. In Europe, most people maybe don't have the means to pay an elite trainer to train them. Here in America, we're lucky enough that if we're doing it here, we have the means to be able to get the best help we can. And in fairness, for somebody that doesn't have the means, us professionals here are also willing to help anybody that comes and asks for help. If it's somebody that wants to learn, I'm sure Quentin will receive him. If he doesn't have the means, I'm sure Marie will receive him. I'm sure Charlotte and Matt will receive them. And we also, we work with, like Quentin said, there's the working students here. It's people that don't have all the means, but they really want to learn. And they really want to find a place in the sport. So that's what we do here,
This is a story of Ken Farrington.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody like Ken Farrington, yeah.
Can you explain a little bit how it works, the relationship between trainers and clients? Is this different from what we see in France or in Europe? I'm saying France because this is where we live and what we know, but what we have, and Marie, you will tell me if you agree, but we have show jumpers, national or international level show jumpers, that needs to have clients that will go to the show, and clients will be accessory. That will be the side part of the activity and of the business and of sports. And clients should be a little bit secondary. How does it work here in the US?
But like Quentin said, it's a big business. The
it's
client, the
business.
training, it's really important here. In Europe, it wasn't that important, but it's becoming really important. More and more riders start to train. I think it's the future. And even the shows, before we didn't have in Europe the shows with the classes for clients, and now there is more and more shows like the Stefex Master or the Global or even other shows where the professional can do the big competition and train their client, which is really important. You cannot train someone and go to do 5-star everywhere and leave your client alone, so it has to be on the same location.
Do you think the horse trade is better here than in Europe? Do you think it's easier and more profitable selling horse here?
I think we both benefit from it, and it's they benefit from us and we benefit from them. They provide the horses to us, but if it wasn't a business for them, then we wouldn't be able to buy the horses. So I think it's a thing that works for both places, Yeah. Usually we buy them in Europe and bring them here to sell for a little bit more money. The market here is the clientele here is bigger, and like you said, here is more of an amateur sport. So a lot of there's here in Wellington is the mecca of selling horses. Like you have people calling you every day. Hey, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? And even if you don't have it, we always say yes, and we start calling people and see where you find it. I have it. I'll send it to you right now. And then I call Quentin, I call Charlotte, I call whoever. Do you have this? Do you have that? And that's how it works. So I think we both places benefit from each other.
No, I think also there's obviously, listen, if we as Americans or people based in the US and North America, if we're going to Europe to buy for horses, we're going to buy. So you have a client base coming to Europe to buy a horse. So if someone goes to Europe to buy a horse, it's not maybe I'm looking for a horse, they're looking to buy a horse. The same thing can happen here in the States, but I think that also in the States, there's such a bigger market for horses. Charlotte was saying earlier, horses can have so many jobs. And I think I know for myself, when I was a younger professional, I thought I'm going to have really, really great high junior jumpers, meter 40, meter 45 horses, and sell them. Marie rode a couple of horses for us at Double H that time, and we sold not very many. But I think as far as myself selling, equitation horses, I can go to Europe and I can go to a breeder who has a 6 or a 7-year-old that they thought was a stallion when it was a 4-year-old. It was going to be amazing and has perfect x-rays and a great gallop and it's beautiful, but it's not that careful. And that's an equitation horse. We can geld it and bring it here and sell it for quite a bit of money. You can make a big profit. So there's a lot of different markets, I think, in the States, and niches to make money. If you're selling a horse for meter 30 or under in Europe, there's not so much money to be made. But I think as far as there's a lot of horses that can be sold for meter 30 and under in the States for a lot of different jobs, and you can do a lot better monetarily.
I think the other interesting thing is like the leasing option here. That doesn't really happen in Europe. I spent a lot of time in Ireland and they have these superstar ponies and I'm like, no, keep them and lease them and you'll end up making more money. Where here, that happens more often than not, I feel like, or even a lease with an option to buy at the end. There's just people that want, they want to have horses and they want to do this for fun. And so, that's a great option for people over here.
Marie, you would be buying, or how to buy horses for French riders, French clients, and also what it is to buy a 1.30 m horse for an US rider. What's the difference? Like those are completely different horses.
I'm still learning.
Yeah,
I'm still learning.
You wouldn't buy the same horse even for the same level of class if it was for the French clients. Yeah,
but I know if I pick a horse to bring here, I'm really picky. Needs to be a good balance, like a nice stride, like careful but not too careful, extremely brave. So I'm really, really careful. If I buy a horse for a client directly, I can even buy a horse with not a perfect technique. It's not a big deal. But when I bring a horse here, I try to have it all. It's hard to find, but it's kind of the perfect horse for any level.
We were talking to Keen 2 years ago here in the US, and Keen said during the interview that it takes a French rider to ride a French horse. What he means is we have crazy horses, not crazy, but not well educated, not well trained horses. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that European horses are?
I think Marie is like an unbelievable rider, and she rode horses for us. I saw Marie around on the video from Ocala last week. What's the name? Vahine. And I thought, like, this is the most goddamn French round I've seen in my life. In America, she just going and she's number one.
You haven't seen the schooling, right?
But I mean, to say like a French rider, French horse, I think that used to be more true than it is now. I think like breeding and where people go all over the world to ride, and the sport's evolving to be a much more blood horse. Everything's so technical and time allows are short. Those horses that are my size horses, typically I'm trying not to have them, don't really make it in the sport anymore. Big scopy horse to go to Calgary is great for about a month of the year. So for sure that's happening, but I think there are more riders, and look at some of like Charlotte's or Marquis horses that are like delicate and fine, and a French horse as far as the blood. I think that's all evolving that way, I would say.
Yeah, I think that we are all looking for French horses now. You know, they're all careful, fast, they don't move well, they're raw in the mouth, they're difficult to ride, but when it comes to competing, they're warriors. So we want that nowadays. You know, I have French horses right now. I have a couple. I have, and I love them. I can go in the ring every time and try to win. It doesn't matter what day of the week it is. If it's the warm-up class, I can go and win it. If it's they're warriors. So I believe we had to adapt to that. Before, you would recognize a French rider and a French horse from 70 miles away. Oh, that's a French horse and a French rider. But nowadays we had to adapt, and you see it again, another example, Carl Cook. There is the perfect example.
U.S. Horse of the Year was a French horse.
The U.S. Horse of the Year was a French horse ridden by an American rider.
That used to be ridden by Julien Epaillard.
Yeah, by Julien Epaillard, which is it doesn't come more French than that. You know, hackamore, no bridle ever, horse taking off, but yeah, I mean, we had to adapt, and there you see it. They're unbelievable horses.
Have you seen Simon Delestre at Paris?
I saw Simon Delestre.
The first round?
Yeah.
That was French.
Yeah, it's French. Same, you see the mare that Simon rides. What's the name? The little one. The Hickstead one. Cayman.
Oh,
yeah, this one.
Okay, Christian Kuckuck, he's German. But he can ride a tiny little blood crate. I mean, he rides such blood horses, or you can see him on a big, typically German horse, and he adapts to both. So I think the difference in this being so specific by a country, the type of rider and horse those lines seem to be blurred a little bit, at least for the riders, I would say.
Yeah.
Question, how do you do to adapt the horse that you buy from Europe to your US amateur riders?
I think you have to adapt yourself. Like, I don't think the horse should adapt. I think you have to adapt as a rider. And I think if myself, riding young horses for so many years really helped me do that. And I also think it takes time. Like, you have to be patient. I've had horses that it takes 3 weeks. I've had horses that it takes a year. So it really depends on the horse, and you just have to give them time, especially when you're buying them younger. They're coming from a completely different system, and maybe we do things differently, but you have to adapt as a rider.
Yeah. And I train a lot of amateur riders, and I think that my niche and market has been that, you know, high amateurs and jumping under 25 and those kind of things. And a lot of the times I think the goalpost might be a bit different. You know, if someone's looking as a professional rider to find the best horse they can bring along to be a Grand Prix horse, that's one goal. But if you're an amateur rider, normally these are girls, they're in college, they have 4 or 5 years, their parents are letting them ride, and then when they're out of college, the parents say, all right, no horses after that. So they have a bit of a short window. So I think for that client, you're looking for a horse that is more of a sure thing quicker. And I think it's a different level of rider, and can they ride a more careful horse or scopy horse? Some riders want to jump, you know, their goal is, I really want to jump the under 25 division here in Florida on the grass, which is great. That's serious enough jumping. It can be scopy and technical, so some riders need a really sweet, brave horse, good scope, maybe not the most careful in the world, other needs more. So I think it's really, as far as a trainer, about putting the match of the horse and rider together, which is expensive. I mean, to have a horse that's ready to get off a plane and within 30 days jump an under 25 Grand Prix in the grass with a young rider that's hard, and it costs a lot of money, and it's a lot of pressure on the trainer, but it's a big part of it.
How much is it here? No, just so that people in Europe can imagine.
I mean, it's hard to say. They know. People in Europe know. I mean, listen, it's if you have a horse that's ready to jump, I mean, if you expect at $1.45, you need at least a $1.50 horse, at least. You really need a 160 horse. So what does it cost to buy a ready-to-go $1.60 horse? A horse costs what someone will pay for it. So it can be a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think if you see an American client coming, a girl ready to buy a horse jump at $1.50, I mean...
I watched the under 25 last week, and I was like, I want all of these horses. They're so cute.
But in all the divisions. I mean, we have a woman in adult jumpers, and she has 3 of 4 horses jumped 160.
Yeah.
And they're jumping 110.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just like... the horses are the quality of the horses here is so unbelievable, and they find their way down the ranks, and all of a sudden you see a horse jumping the adult jumpers, you're like, jump the 5-star for you. There it is.
Yeah.
So the last one subject, guys. We were recently told that selections for the US team were made only on merit and on the ranking list. How does the American coach go about putting together a team here?
I think Charlotte's for that one.
Just because it's not completely similar in Europe and it's not based on ranking only.
I mean, okay, so the U.S. has a list that's public of riders and then of horses. And the short list is put together partially off that list, partially off discretion choice. It's a mix of the rider list, the horse list, and then our chef to keep chooses a few riders that he thinks are going well at that moment. And that makes up the short list. And then the Olympic team or the World Championship team, Pan Am team is chosen based off of, I think it's 10 riders. And yeah, I mean, I think you saw who went to the Olympics this year. Team USA left with a silver medal, which was fantastic. I think the 4 riders that were there, they deserve to be there. And, you know, you have McLean and Laura who have been in this for a long time, and they're 2 of my idols, as is Ken. Ken had an unfortunate situation at the Olympics where his horse wasn't feeling his best or her best, and Carl stepped in and did an unbelievable job. And yeah, I mean, it is different, but because America is so big and we have so many riders, it's really hard for our chef to keep track of everything that's going on all the time. So that list, it just makes it a little bit easier, and there's a point system that's quite complicated actually, but it makes sense on the computer list, and yeah, that's how they put their teams together.
Yeah, and I think it's easy. I mean, I think it's probably different with every chef to keep, but I mean, I think it's, you know, Robert Ridlin, who's the chef, he's a numbers guy. Yeah. And but to be honest, the sport is going, there's so much more stats and like the horse clear round percentage and all that stuff. It seems like things are kind of trending that direction anyway. But I think it depends on, you know, they always have discretionary choices, as Charlotte said, but I think it really depends who's in the driver's seat and who they think, what they're resting on. If they like stats, then they're going with who's highest on the list.
Yeah, I think too, for championships, you have to sort of introduce a rider well. It's hard to introduce a rider and keep your A team, you know, especially with the Olympic format now that's only 3 riders. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few years, but I think so far our system is working because the last few championships we've left with medals. So
do you believe that the US and European sports, equestrian sports, play both on the same ground in terms of merit? In terms of merit, like, are they both meritocratic sports? Do we reach the highest level because of the merit and not because of money or network and everything?
100%.
Yeah?
100%. It doesn't matter how much money or what horse you're riding. At the end, you have to go in the ring and ride it good. You know, it doesn't matter if you're riding the best horse in the world. If you're not a good rider, it's not going to work. So, of course, it's about merit there, and it is merit here. You know, it's... I think there's no difference.
You go down a start list during WEF, and there's a reason why, you know, 1, 3, 4, 5, 8, they're all here. All the world's top riders are here, and a Saturday night here is as big as anywhere.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Marie?
Oh, yeah. Yes. The course, when you can jump here, you can jump anywhere in the world.
Okay. So there's no difference in terms of like technicity and height and everything.
I mean, for sure, I would say for sure, like the 5 and 4 star level, I'd say it's very on par. I mean, maybe you can say, you know, if you're in a 3-star show in Lexington in the summer versus, you know, Megève, when you're at this like tiny little ring and everything's bouncing off the walls, for sure there's difference in variables. But I think as far as the highest level and the highest level of sport, you know, the 4 and 5 stars here at these shows and at Saturday night, that's as difficult jumping as there is anywhere.
Well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you for this time. That was a great conversation.